Hello.
Nickie Davis, Executive Director at the District. Geoff Karr, Treasury Sales Officer at the Bank of Missouri. And Erica Pefferman, President of Como Magazine and Columbia Marketing Group.
Hi, guys.
I would like to thank each of you for taking time to speak with us today. Each of our panelists will have time to introduce themselves and give some background on how this topic relates to them or some of their favorite pieces of advice. And then we'll spend the rest of our time answering any questions you all might have. If you have a question, please write it in the chat function available in your toolbar. When typing a question, indicate this by first putting a capital Q with a question mark. Without further ado, we would like to turn it over to our panel. First, though, they would like to say a few words.
I can talk about this.
You first, Barbie.
As we all know, there's a lot of things going on in our world from the pandemic, which this series specifically addresses, but that we are also dealing with a time of extreme distress in our country due to the killing of Black people in the streets. And I don't think we should have any event this week and further without taking a moment to recognize that that's happening, and that as we think of ourselves surviving through this, advancing our careers and making sure we're doing a good job in our careers, that we also take time to think about how we can assist in making sure those who don't have the same advantages as us are given them through our leadership. And so I feel like taking time to do that for just a minute, maybe take notes, would be really important. And I know there's a lot to think about, but to always have that kind of underlying what we're doing is really important to me, and I think all the other panelists. And I know the Chamber, they were on the call yesterday with the Inclusive Excellence group, and they've committed to it too. So I think it's important for all of us to do that. Anyone else?
Nicely said, Barbie. Keegan, I think you're still muted there.
Does anyone else have anything, or do we want to move on into our webinar?
I think Barbie said it perfectly for all of us.
All right, then, well, Barbie, you're up first.
Okay. My name is Barbie Banks, and I am the cinema director at Ragtag Film Society. So I'm sure some of you are familiar with it, but we are a arts nonprofit here in Columbia with two main projects: the Ragtag Cinema, which is downtown in the district, and the True False Film Festival, which takes place in the district and kind of various places throughout the downtown Columbia. When we were very fortunate to have our festival this year, which is not the case for a lot of film festivals. And as it was happening, we were also kind of watching our world change drastically because of COVID-19. And when we finished the festival, we had to quickly pivot to figure out, now what does our organization look like with this happening? I'm not gonna lie, I took a good 3 days to just kind of freak out and cry because I thought our world was going to be changing way more drastically than has played out. But then I pulled myself up and started thinking about ways an organization that is set around gathering people and having shared experiences with people could pivot to continuing our mission, but also using new innovative ways. And I wish I could take credit for any of it, but really what I did was I pulled together our strong team members who I knew were willing to try new things, that were willing to do the research for the technology that we would need to make that happen. We're not afraid to try new things, and we're willing to put in the work even at a time when we kind of wanted to all halt and take a break. And so, which is typically what happens after the festival, is we all go off grid for a while and take a breather, and we weren't able to do that. And so we worked with our web designer to come up with new ways to put information on our website, which in the past has just been a very like boring piece on the web that shows what films we're showing, but we all of a sudden had to use it for a much broader thing. Our programmer, Ted, started reaching out to all of the distribution companies of films to figure out what they were going to be doing. Because we work with such international distributors, it was different for all these different people. And so we just met daily and encouraged each other and really worked hard to make sure what we were doing met our mission, but in a very new way. And then as we've gone through it and things have changed for us, we've been able to, get excited about the things that we've implemented and determine what we want to continue doing. I think in some ways we wouldn't have done new ideas if we weren't forced to. And that is a silver lining in this, that we could have just continued doing business as usual and trying to stay positive that this is a wrench that was thrown at us and we're happy to take it. And, about, I would say 2 months in, there was a kind of turning point where everybody was just exhausted by what was happening. And I think that we took a week off and didn't have any new films, no fun watch along activities. And that was really important. And I think what we did with that worked is we made sure our community members, our members of the cinema, knew what we were doing, that we weren't just going off grid because we weren't doing work, but it was intentional. And so sharing that information with them was important to say, I know you're not seeing a new innovative thing this week, but we're doing that so Ted could rest. He actually has a new baby, so Steph could spend time outside instead of in front of her computer, and that, Barbie could take a nap. And so very intentional about communicating with those people. And that's what I think has made us pretty successful in coming out on the other side of still a important arts organization in Columbia. We just got approved by the city to reopen. And so we're doing that. We also, we have had a huge shift in our leadership with somebody stepping down. And so we're also dealing with that. We have a big event that we normally do in August that we're switching. And so it's just a lot of layers, and it feels like there's constant barriers being put up. But I think if you surround yourself with the right team members, do some self-care, and really take time to reflect on the decisions that you're making, you're going to continue to move forward. And that's, I guess we'll see in a few months, but I think we're successful at it. So.
Thank you, Barbie. Nickie, you're up next.
Thank you. Hi, I am Nickie Davis. I am the Executive Director of the District Downtown CID. We are a community improvement district, technically a political subdivision. We have about 600 businesses and are paid off of the sales tax of our businesses within the district. So we are clearly, because majority of our businesses are restaurants and small businesses, it's been a very interesting time for us. And I think Barbie touched on it a little bit, surrounding yourself with the people that you can trust and are there to work and are excited to work has been hugely important for us to get out the information to our businesses. Information from the government, from the feds has literally been changing hour by hour. It's been an incredibly difficult time for us to make sure that rumors aren't getting out of hand, that we can have a communication system with our businesses that allows them to be on top of the situation as much as possible. So that for us has been the biggest pivoting point. Is we've always had good communication with our businesses, but now we have to make sure that it's even better than it was before, between the city, our businesses, and any financial institution that can help them figure out how to navigate these times. We have been away from the office, but still in the district quite a bit. making sure that we can check in on our businesses as need be, and finding any way forward that we can help them. For us, for our businesses, they are, they felt this from day one. For us, the district, we won't feel the effects of these sales tax until next year. So it's interesting as we are trying to do our budget for next year, how we are pivoting and making sure that we're keeping funding where it needs to, stay safe downtown, stay clean downtown, and whatever else it is that we can do to help our businesses in the coming year, because this will not end in a couple of months. This will be at least 6 years to a year of recovery for our businesses that can make it through this immediate crisis. So we will continue to work with them as best we can, and listen to their needs and how we can bring them what they desperately are missing at this point.
Yeah, thank you, Nickie. Geoff, you're up.
Yes, my name is Geoff Karr. I am at the Bank of Missouri. This is actually my second week in office. So I have made a career change since we're in the middle of this pandemic. I don't know who would do that, but I have. And so here I am. I'm working in office this week. And as I reflect upon how things have gone since early March with COVID, we realize as banking partners how crucial we were to the business community and how we could push out the payroll protection. And so we realized real early on that we were going to help in any way possible to make things happen, to keep the sort of lights on, so to speak, keep things going. And so we realized, working from home, how do we adapt? How do we make it easier for our business clients to be able to do business still and manage what they do day to day? So we realized, adding things like DocuSign, just being able to remotely work with our customers was numerous. From a sort of a looking back career-wise, I kind of reflect upon my 14 years in banking and the changes that I've done on a personal level. And most of the time are decisions that I made on my own. I took different roles within the 14 years of my career. I've had 10 different job positions, but in each scenario, it was a situation where it was calculated. I looked at it, had an opportunity to grow myself. And I thought that was an important piece as I measured my career growth. But just last year, I was part of an organization that went through a merger, right? And so that was one of the more difficult changes because the element of decision, quote unquote, was not in my hand. So I had to work through that, and communication was crucial. So I think about those things as we kind of field some questions and go through that phase of this meeting. And then on a personal level, I think it's worth sharing because I think we all have obviously a lot of personal changes. My wife and I we had received information 18 months ago that our son was diagnosed with cancer. And so we had to figure out how to adapt, how to pivot, how to do things differently in the normal, all the things that you just could never handle before, right? So change is certainly prevalent, and it was very fitting as I got in this morning. We get daily upbeats from our organization, and so I'll share this quote, and then I'll pass it off to Erica, but it says, change will come our way. We can go through it, or we can grow through it. We grow when we seek out solutions rather than let obstacles hinder us. So that was a pretty fitting quote for this conversation.
Thank you, Geoff. Erica, you're up.
Thanks, Keegan. I talked to Catherine about who she was putting together for this panel. I was like, this is a perfect group of people because not only do I know them all well personally, both as friends and in their careers, but they've all been through big changes, and are taking on big new roles or changing the banks or a variety of things in the last couple of years. You guys have done it gracefully and beautifully. So I think you've done a wonderful job with that. We have 2019 was crazy for us, and we didn't realize that 2020 would try to top it. But last year, my partner Fran and I bought our business, Columbia Marketing Group, and Coma Magazine from an older generation of partners that we had. And we decided to move forward on our own. So that was the 1st of June last year. So we just had our 1-year anniversary. And we moved into a new office space down in the district. And we're technically like one building off the district, but we adopted you. Yeah, so we're in. And And so that was a crazy time. And then we merged magazines. I had Columbia Business Times and Como Living, and we merged them into the new Como magazine. And so we felt like that was a great deal of change to survive through, but nothing could have prepared us for what this year has been like. When I remember completely panicking the first year, or the first week, well, it felt like a year. The first week did feel like a year of COVID, when things were shutting down and businesses were being affected, because the first thing historically that people cut when it comes to eliminating expenses is marketing. And so I immediately grew very scared that our entire business model wouldn't be able to make it. We immediately looked at our resources, both financial, like our time commitment, our employee commitment, our software and innovative technology commitment, like what were we doing to put ourselves in the best position? And we made a lot of changes. And then we were very, very busy. The marketing firm, we were probably worked twice as hard as we did before this, because it turns out people need messaging during times of crisis, and people need working websites, and people need ways to digitally communicate with their clients and prospects. So we were very blessed in that we stayed busy. And then the community rallied around the magazine and has been able to keep us publishing good content, keep the community connected and talking about what's going on. So that hasn't come without a lot of change. We all immediately, I think we sent everybody home March 12th. We didn't miss a beat. We all worked remotely. We've published every issue through the whole thing. We were able to not lay off any staff until just this month. We decided to eliminate one of our positions, and we're still keeping her on until next week. And just really looking at some different ways in which we can continue to be innovative. And just like Barbie had mentioned, there were some changes and things that we wanted to do that we just never would have probably put the brain power or time and effort to if we hadn't been forced to. And so being forced into finding new ways to be compelling and relevant to our readers for the magazine created opportunities for us to do a really cool digital version of it, and some really cool interactive elements to the magazine for the online edition. There's been a lot of things that we've been willing to change. I mean, it became a point where nothing was considered sacred cow anymore. Like, we looked at everything, every position, every use of our time, the paper. We even decided we don't need a printer anymore, which, by the way, hardest contract to get out of in the world is a printer contract. So don't sign them ever. Anyway, but we looked at every single way we did business, and everything was up for negotiation. Everything was up for being reaffirmed as an expense, as both financially and as the use of our time. And we felt pretty good. I remember one day, Fran and I looked at each other and we thought, if and when, I like to say when, but if and when we get to the other side of this, our business will be way stronger than it ever was before. And we will have been forced to reaffirm every decision that we make as a company and our mission. Our mission is to be here for Columbia. So there have been times when we were forced to think between, do we cut pages in the magazine, or do we give those pages to businesses that need the advertising and marketing? So we've tried to stay true to who we are, but it's been really scary. And there have been times I had the same first few days that Barbie did. I had a complete and total meltdown in front of my banker one day, and who's Eric Morrison, if you guys know him. He's real touchy-feely, so he's just like, here's your tissue. But we could have done it without him. If we didn't have our banking partners, Bank of Missouri has been amazing. Providence Bank is our primary bank. They've been amazing. I just have seen how hard these bankers have worked to get everyone taken care of, get their loans processed. And I know if I was working 18 hours, they were working 20 hours a day when the PPP loans first came out. And we've seen firsthand how everybody's had to shift the way that they work. And the final thing I would say is that we were able to also add a couple of, when we were looking at reducing expenses through the magazine, we were looking at additional demand on the marketing firm side. And so we were put in a position where we need to replace a couple of positions, like Phil. We had employees that had decided to pursue dreams of theirs in other directions. And we worked through those transitions, and then we were able to hire some people that were in a really good position to make a career move because, just with supply and demand and other companies being shut down, we were able to even recruit talent to Columbia from outside of Columbia to come here to work for us. And so we would not have been in that position if we hadn't been through going through this experience as a whole. So, you know, I think it's just how you look at it. You know, as you've mentioned before about growing through change, Geoff, or overcoming obstacles. Barbie, and we all have these things, but our team really rallied together, and we looked at, and they've been amazing through everything. So you have to have a positive outlook, and you have to look at every obstacle as an opportunity to do something new and different. So that's what our last 3 months has been like. And the last 2019 and 2020, it's been nothing but change. So when Catherine says, you want to talk about change? I was like, how much time you got? So that's me.
All right, now it's time for questions. We haven't had any come in yet, but I've got a few prepared here. What are some techniques you all use to keep constant change from overwhelming and stressing you out?
I'll start on this one. We have a huge commitment to emotional health within our office and our culture. So I would say that we were pretty well prepared to deal with this because we had dedicated a lot of time and resources in the last several years to understanding how we feel emotionally, how we interact with our teammates, how we process conflict. And so I think myself, Fran and I specifically, and then the rest of our team were able to deal well with it because we had resources. We had common vocabulary. We had a common value for things of that nature to talk it out, to process things, to be able to step away if you needed to, but to be able to be self-aware to the point of understanding how you're feeling, what's happening, what's causing it, and then being able to process that through with someone else has been critical to me. And then the other key thing was for Fran and I to be able to talk every single day. My business partner and I, we get along so well. We love each other so much that we share the same office. Like our desks face each other. So when we were at home, it was a real struggle for the first couple of weeks because we were so separated and we weren't able to sense what was going on with the other one or collaborate or share ideas. And so we fixed that immediately by creating an everyday check-in at 8:30 over Zoom so we could see each other's faces. And that was because we were very aware of how we process thoughts and feelings and emotions. So I would say that's how we've been able to deal with it.
Erica, those are some awesome points. You mentioned, I think the overall theme there is your communication level is through the roof. And certainly not every organization is able to do that. You're nimble, you can make that happen. I think another thing that I'm hearing, and this is something I see from our leadership, is just being vulnerable. Like, we clearly don't know the answer. We're in a situation where we need all hands on deck. Ideas are welcome. And I think that certainly brings a stronger sense of sort of community within your teams, either locally or as a whole. So I just want to point that out. Listen to your
thought. We use Slack at our organization, and a simple thing is we created a channel that's called Inspiration, and anybody can place something in there from, highbrow, surveys that are done to a video of a hedgehog doing an obstacle course, but just constant reminders of things that just make us smile and laugh has been really important. And then we also, same thing, do a Monday morning coffee that everybody in the organization can attend. And it's usually a very lighthearted topic of what's your favorite book or movie or whatever it is, but just being able to see each other, and when you can't see each other, is really proven to be really important. And personally, I think one of the hardest things about this has been not having any mentors that have gone through a pandemic. Surprisingly, none of ours were probably alive during the Spanish flu. So that was hard. And so it was finding those mentors that are able to adapt through change rather than gone through this specific thing has been really important for me.
Yeah, I would say the same. I am very much a face-to-face person, and it's hard when you can't do that, especially when your business owners are closed to the public. So the best thing you can do is one of these Zoom type things. There's only 3 of us in our office. So, we started out with doing about 2 Zooms a week for our businesses, specifically talking about COVID stuff. And the more and more we did it, we just kind of like to do it now. And it seems like we always have a good group of people that want to just kind of riff off each other and see how everyone else is doing. Yeah, like Barbie said, none of us have been through this, so it's great to be able to find your peers and vent a little bit.
All right. Let's see. How do effective leaders help others, coworkers, friends, family, etc., embrace change? What strategies can they implement to inspire others to embrace change?
For me, with working with entrepreneurs and business owners, if you don't bend, you're going to break. And I think that it's helped a lot of business owners understand that you have to go with the flow. And being an entrepreneur, I think a lot of them have that sense anyways. But being able to sit back and be like, this is not going to work for us anymore. We've got to think outside the box now. Is probably the best thing that has happened to some of their businesses. And things have come out of this from many different businesses that other ones are utilizing what they have implemented now. And this will be a way that they do business in the future, not just during COVID. So I think letting people experience change in their own terms, but making sure they understand that it's okay. It doesn't have to be how the business plan was written. Being able to just like this, being able to go with the flow is healthy a lot of the times.
Yeah, I think that Nickie's absolutely right. I think if you're an entrepreneur or, like if you're going into any kind of leadership or ownership or management role, you have to be okay with change because our world changes every day. Before COVID, it changed all the time. Your clients' needs change, technology changes, your favorite employee will quit, like things change, and you have to be willing and able to adapt and move through that. I like to think that if you are successful in our current scenario, you're going to be fine. And so I've been in business for 22 years in one shape or another, and this is by far the hardest time frame I've ever worked in. I haven't owned my own business for that long, but I have worked with business owners that long, and I feel like if you can remain open and adaptable, understand that it's so cliche. It's not like the only thing that remains constant is change itself, right? Like it's going to happen. Don't be surprised when it happens. And just understand that those that, as Nickie mentioned, go with the flow or say, okay, this is what we're doing now, and this is how we're going to adapt to that. Will be the ones that are successful. The ones that are rigid and get frustrated, aren't willing to work with their people, their customers, or even themselves, will never be successful long term. So it's a requirement. You have to.
Funny, I made a note here. I wrote, entrepreneurs laugh in the face of change. They have no fear, right? So they should be able to handle. In fact, I remember seeing a story with Van Dog Master Distillery, right? And how they pivoted. And I'm sure there's plenty more that we can go through, but just to see his operations just like halt what they do best and go ahead and start selling off the hand gel. It's phenomenal. So I just want to point that out.
I think it's important to shift your thinking from, another change, another crisis, another thing, to waking up each morning and being like, what crisis is it today? I'm ready, and I had to quickly change that when I became one of the top leaders in our org, and because there's always something, and instead of freaking out and watching it pile up, you're just more prepared for it by changing your thinking a little, and that's important. And to take a breath sometimes of like, whoa, this has been a lot of change, what people do I need to check in on, what processes might need to change, and what's going to be different about, for us, our program or your product, what's going to look different, and taking time to reflect on that has been really important. Because especially when at the beginning of all this, we were seeing such fast changing information coming out, and we didn't know what our state and city was going to do. And so you have to adapt to that, but then take time to reflect back is just really key.
Barbie, you just said something that that resonated with me, because I'm very bad about, I'm really great at change, and I'll make a new decision, and if it was a bad decision, I'll make another one. What I'm bad about, or have historically been bad about, is explaining that process to other people around me. And so what I think owners and people in the position of making change happen or dealing with change really have to get good at having that conversation that's happening in their head with themselves outside with some key staff or even their whole staff. So one of the things that we did was just I gave everybody all the information that I had from day one, which was like, this is all I have. This is all I know. I don't know any more than that. These are our commitments today for the foreseeable future. And then you built on that. Because entrepreneurs or the leaders of the organization are good with change, you're usually leading a group of people that help you be successful because they are more strategic and planned and organized than we are. And it's so important to keep them in the loop with what's going on. And so I often tell people I mentor to, like, whatever dialogue you're having inside when you get from point A to point B, make sure that you've explained that process to someone, because most of our reports just need the context. They just need to know you've thought of it. What is the context? How did you make that decision? And they're like, oh yeah, I'm totally on board with that. And so during the specific time, sharing even more than we might normally share, just being as transparent as possible, has been something that I think has helped a lot.
I like that. And I think on the opposite side of that is being able to listen to your people. Communication is huge, but being able to take what is happening to, I don't really have employees so much, but being able to listen to your business owners or your employees or whatever it may be. And one, just letting them know that you are there and you are listening. And then two, they might have some of the best ideas or thoughts or actions that you could take to help yourself or your business. So I think listening is also a huge part of being able to be an accomplished leader.
And if there's any John Gordon fans out there, don't be an energy vamp. Don't take away, sometimes seeing the change more as a challenge and not a threat. Obviously, change creates the fear of the unknown, the uncertainty. But if you could frame it as a challenge, as hard as that may sound, certainly goes a long way.
Okay, our next question is, when faced with change, we often want to retreat back into our comfort zone. So how do you fight that urge?
I'm a big fan of the Wonder Woman stance. I can't even remember who wrote the article about doing like the power stance before you head into a hard thing. And that's what I had to kind of do with myself every morning, of like, one, remind myself that I'm not an imposter and that I should be leading this org. And just like doing that power stance really helped me to remind myself of who I am. And so it is really easy to retreat back into like, oh, I just know I'm really good at spreadsheets, I'll just stay there. But to get out of that is when you see, I think, the most impactful changes, and you grow more as a professional too, because you're challenging yourself quicker than you've ever thought before.
Nickie, you kind of highlighted previously, you mentioned passion, right? So if you can kind of drill down that passion again, that why that is oftentimes mentioned, certainly a big part of not going back to the comfort zone. So something that I think about. And then as I was preparing for this meeting today, I was looking at a few things. There was a trick that said do self-interrogation questions to yourself. Like, for example, why am I doing this? Or how can I grow through this? Something to that effect. So start asking yourself some questions to sort of prepare, whether it's speaking in front of people or what have you. So. some more thoughts there.
So I have a really large comfort zone. I'm always pretty much in my comfort zone for the most part. I would say that because I tackle big things, and I think that is part of what I just totally get excited about, right? And so except for skydiving, I won't do that. But other than that, like, I really like taking on huge challenges, so I kind of get jazzed about it. But this one scared me. This one scared me a lot, and I don't really get, not to sound cocky or anything, but I don't get scared too much because I figure, like, it's something that we'll find a way through. I was terrified. And so when I would say that if I was going to be pushed, like, into a comfort zone, it really, at that point, it was just really just being scared of failing. And so what I did was I remember literally the day when I thought, okay, well, what's the worst that can happen? I had this conversation with myself in my car. I was like, what's the worst thing that can happen? And I listed off, financial ruin. Okay, that could happen. And lose your business. Okay, that could happen. But once I kind of put the name on it, and then when I also followed it up with, and so is everyone else. Like, if we lost the company or things went terribly right now, I would be in really good company with a lot of really, really smart people. And so once I kind of came to terms with that, then I was no longer worried about my comfort zone or my fear or what was going on, because I was just going to do the best job I could. And I already accepted what the worst thing that could happen was. And so that was I know it sounds kind of simple, but that was a really pivotal moment for us, Then I had the conversation with Fran, and then we're like, okay, we looked the devil in the face. We knew what it looked like, and we just went forward from there. So I think it's really important, because when you get scared, like Geoff was saying, it's fear of the unknown is what keeps people from engaging change. And so what are you afraid of? And put a name on it. What is it that you're afraid is going to happen? And then once you put the name on it and talk about it and deal with that particular thing, it's usually not as bad as you think it's going to be. And then once you know what it is, it's usually totally something you can deal with. So
I'd have to say, sorry, Geoff, you want to go?
I like that. Put a name on it.
Yeah. Having peers around you that can inspire you and push you. I think staying inspired is super important. And when you have people around you that can, if you feel like you're wanting to retreat, that can kind of pull you out of that and get you motivated again. And they don't have to be your, even in your same type of work. I just think having people that inspire you is incredibly important. And if you don't have people that inspire you, there's some really good TED Talks and other ways that you can be inspired to keep moving forward.
I think one of the things, because we manage a group of creatives, everybody that works for me is an artist in some form or fashion. So what I just reminded them on a daily basis is forget about all the rest of that. Do what you're passionate about. You love designing. You love writing. You love building websites. Today, you're just building websites. Like, just do something, play, find something cool and exciting to do, and letting them realize that they're still working within their passion area, and they're still, like, digging into that, help them kind of free up some of that anxiety.
Okay, our next one is, how can I contribute to embracing change and create positive change at my workplace if I'm not in a leadership position?
This is a good one. I don't mind going first on this one, because I've had some fantastic employees that have really done this. And it goes back to communicating what we need to happen. So, we would communicate, we need to make sure we're running this as lean as we possibly can. And so we invited everyone to look within their areas and seeing if they couldn't find ways to which to reduce expenses. So our reports usually can see things at a different level than we can. And so encouraging them, giving them permission to speak into strategy, giving them permission And one, as a leader, you can do that. But if you're not the leader, don't wait for someone to give you permission. If you see a good idea, you take that to your boss and say, here's a way we can save money. Here's a way we can provide more value. Here's a way, or here's a client that I think needs us. Whatever it is that you do, make your voice heard, because I promise you we need it. You know, we're focused right now on keeping everything between the yellow lines. And so anybody that brings value to the conversation gets giant brownie points from me right now, you know, and then they get the opportunity to do more things that they love and care about. So I would tell anyone that they're probably most positioned to be able to impact change from the street level. And we definitely would want to hear from them.
And I think that's part of being a good leader, is making sure that the people around you feel comfortable enough to have that voice. I think making sure that you create that team environment is really where you see businesses flourish, as opposed to, and I think we've all worked in one of those places where you didn't feel valued and you didn't feel like you could approach a higher up about something or another. So that's always important to keep in your headspace as you try and lead through anything.
Great book, recently read. I'm a reader, is The Culture Code. I don't know if many are familiar with that one, Daniel Coyle, but three main things, which again, Nickie, you highlighted as well as Erica, but the leadership to some extent has to build safety within the organization so that you can feel comfortable to bring ideas to the table, to make and ask, whatever that might be. But you also, again, as a leader, and Erica, you've done this, is share your concerns with the rest of the group. They know what the risks are. And then lastly, just establishing purpose. So I just want to highlight, this conversation reminds me of that book called The Culture Code by Daniel Coyle. I suggest checking it.
Yeah, I think kind of, we've all said this, but none of us have gone through this kind of thing before. So in some ways it's levels the playing field for everyone in an org to say, like, there's nobody to look to who has experience in this. And so, like Erica said, you come to the table and say, this is all I know. How do we handle, you know, X challenge that we're dealing with? And so I think if you're not in a leadership position, one, I think everybody in an org is in some sort of leadership position, but that you use your voice, and whether that's one-on-one with a leader, a person in a leadership position, or rallying your coworkers to also, you know, share how they're feeling and what good ideas that they have. Because if we're not all in this together, we're going to fall apart, and we have to be able to support one another.
Okay, what is the best piece of advice you'd like to share with the audience?
I love everyone like looking.
I know, we're looking at who's gone first. I'll just say that I'm going to go back to my standard of, if you don't understand what makes yourself tick and why you make the decisions that you do, you can't understand the world around you or the people around you. So I'm a huge advocate for emotional intelligence and reading and understanding things, and I know people say it's not personal, it's business, but that's total bullshit. I mean, everybody's business is incredibly important to them. Our jobs are incredibly personal to them. Your relationships are personal to you. Your income is personal. Everything about it is personal, and we don't leave our humanity at the door when we come into our jobs. That's just not realistic. So having a good understanding of, you know, what it is, how you process thought, how you engage conflict, and how you are wired up to be as a person, taking that journey and understanding that helps you automatically understand and be able to help understand other people that you are in relationship with. And if you can do that well, you will be successful in work, in your relationships, in your family, in lots of different areas. So if anybody ever asks me what's my biggest piece, I don't care what it is. What's your biggest piece of advice about hiking? I'm going to say emotional intelligence. I wouldn't, because I don't like to hike either. But anyway, it really is key. It is key to everything. It's, I think, the difference maker in entrepreneurs that have gone on to make life-changing and impactful companies, and people that have grown to be mentors to other people. Those things are just really, really important.
I would have to say, listen. I am a big advocate for just letting people vent. You will learn things. You'll learn how you can advocate for them better, and make sure that you are doing your job in an appropriate manner to lead them. And if you're not listening to the people you're trying to lead, where are you going? You don't know where you're going. So that's probably my most important thing as someone that's trying to figure out how to lead people through this time.
I think it's important to, it sounds silly, but to just use this time to try new things. Like, everybody is trying things that they've never done before. I mean, my mom is working from home and using Zoom, which I never thought would happen. I, with some friends, did like a radio play via Zoom. So like, we're all trying these new things that we never thought we might attack. And I think that's what you should do during this time, where we're all going to try things that look silly and maybe don't succeed as much as the other, but we're going to see something's going to stick, and that's how we're going to move forward through this.
And sort of similarly, I mean, life's certainly about a lot of experiences, and a continuum of compound growth, as I always kind of like to say. There's just things going to happen. You're going to learn from them. You're going to continue to grow through all this. And in some way, shape, or form, we're all part of something obviously much bigger. Right? And so that sounds, I guess, somewhat cliche, but are good reminders to know that we are part of something very bigger than ourselves.
And our last one is, what is a question that you wished we would have asked you?
Gosh, I don't even know. I didn't think I'd be stuck on a question, but I might be. Guys, does anyone else have one?
I think I would like to know, like, I can clearly tell that Geoff has some good book recommendations. Like, have you guys been on any specific seminars or followed anything specific that has gotten you guys through, a lot of this and trying to figure out how you can lead better?
Oh, that's a good question, Nickie. I personally am a huge fan of reading as well. And I keep a reading list going all the time. And sometimes I bump out the first ones. But my favorite book of all time and my favorite business author of all time is probably Patrick Lencioni. And he writes some amazing books, business fables. But his best, in my opinion, most consolidated book that we've used a lot is The Advantage by Patrick Lencioni. And it talks about organizational health and creating a great organization. And if you have that strong foundation, you can do everything else. And so there's all kinds of great books out there that attack great topics. And I think that's a good foundation to build on.
I recently joined a executive roundtable with Carolyn Sullivan at New Chapter Coaching, and I was a little skeptical because it was over Zoom, and I do prefer everything in person where we can feel our energies. But that's been really helpful. So finding a group of people that you can confidentially talk about the hard things with is really good. But we focused about psychological safety at work, and that's been really interesting. I've always thought about people feeling safe and comfortable at work, but to dive more into that, it's been really interesting. And I'm not as much of a reader, but I love TED Talks and podcasts, and there's some great TED Talks out there about psychological safety at work and what that means when there's conflict and when there's not. And so highly recommend diving into that topic.
Yes, I have a few books. I can't read them here at the office, so I take one home from time to time. The Go-Giver is an all-time favorite of mine. Again, very similar to Lencioni. It's a fable. Really, really like that read. And then Adam Grant is an organizational psychologist, has a podcast, as well as a few different books. So I would recommend his work as well.
I've done a lot of seminars. I am very much a face-to-face person, or at least needing to see a face kind of person. And this one kind of only refers to me, I guess, but there is an international downtown association, and they have amazing webinars that really have helped me look at how to move forward. So I think finding those, kind of like Barbie, you found like maybe some mastermind meetings or something like that, finding those people maybe a little bit in your field that can really help you, see through their experience in a different city, different town, what they're going through and how maybe you can implement that in your leadership here, has been very helpful. And it's also really helpful just to realize that this is not just Columbia, Missouri, this is all over the country, the entire world. So that has been a huge help to calm my nerves a little bit, I guess.
I think it's really cool cool/weird/ completely totally bizarre, but to think, I can't think of another thing where everyone in the world was going through the same thing at the same time. The entire world, wherever you go, well, it's not political, it's not, a faith-based, regardless of everything, every ecosystem in the world right now is dealing with the same thing. And I think it's a unique time in our history. And I think when we look back, when we're our grandchildren and talking to them about, 2020, whew, what a year, it'll be something monumental that we're living through. And so just taking a second to step back and realize that, and realize what you want your mark to be on it during the time, because people will ask us, what was your experience like during the pandemic? What did you do? What was your way that you contributed, or how did you guys feel? And it's going to be a big deal. We have the ability to see that whereas the people that went through the Spanish influenza didn't probably have the same insight into that because of digital technology and our ability to be completely connected to each other anywhere at any time, has shared information at a rate that no other time in history have we had. So I'm just kind of moved by that idea.
Absolutely. And it's amazing to, just we already had an awesome community here in Columbia, but to look around and see our fellow leaders, just like all of you guys are, and just our community in general, how we've pulled through this and kind of pulled through this together with hosting, webinars like this and many others that I'm sure everyone has been on. So yeah, it's definitely something we won't soon forget.
Yeah.
Well, I guess if no one has any other questions, we'll wrap it up. We'd like to thank everyone for being in attendance, and thank VU for being the presenting sponsor of EPIC. And a big thank you to our phenomenal panelists for speaking with everyone today. And I hope to one day be able to see all y'all in person at an event again. Hope everyone has a great rest of the day and a good weekend.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you all so
guys.
much.
Thanks, Keegan.
Thank you.
See ya.
Yeah.